Adam Stanford hadn't been back to his hometown in 15 years. The last time he stood in this yard, he was a young man, cast out by his family, accused of something he hadn't done. Back then, his older brother Nate and their mother Brenda had claimed he had stolen money from the family business, though in reality, it had been their plan to get rid of him. Adam remembered that night vividly. He had tried to prove his innocence, but his father remained silent, while his mother and brother looked at him with contempt. "Get out, Adam," Brenda had said coldly. "We don't want to see you again." And so he left. He left everything behind: the house, his friends, his hometown. He moved to California, where he started from scratch, working 2 jobs before eventually building his own business. His real estate renovation and resale company became a success, and now he was a wealthy man. But he had never considered returning, until he received a letter from a lawyer. The letter stated that after his father's death, their family home legally belonged to him. Adam was surprised. He had been sure his family had transferred ownership to Nate long ago, but it seemed his father never did. And now, here he was, standing in front of the house where he had spent his childhood, watching as shadows moved behind the windows. His return had not gone unnoticed. The door swung open abruptly and Nate stepped onto the porch. He looked almost the same, still carrying that confident, self-absorbed expression, the same excessive arrogance. He eyed Adam up and down, smirking. "What are you doing here?" he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "I came to my house," Adam replied calmly. "This isn't your house." Nate's voice turned cold. "We've been living here for years." Adam pulled out a copy of the legal documents. "The law says otherwise." Nate froze for a moment before quickly turning back inside. Within a minute, Brenda appeared on the porch. She too had barely changed. Her hair had grayed, but the same disapproval was in her eyes as it had been 15 years ago. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice calm but carrying a hidden threat. "But I did." She frowned. "We already sold the house," she said. Adam raised an eyebrow. "Really? To whom?" "Andrew Collins," Nate interjected. "He offered a good price." Adam's interest piqued. Collins was a local businessman who had always wanted to get his hands on their land. His father had always refused his offers, but without their father, it seemed his mother and brother had decided to make a deal. "The deal hasn't been signed yet," Adam stated dryly, "which means the house is still mine." Nate stepped closer, his face full of rage. "Don't be stupid, Adam. You're not wanted here." "But it's my house," Adam smiled, "and I'm not going anywhere." At that moment, he realized the real game was just beginning. Adam hadn't expected a warm welcome, but he also hadn't thought his family would show their hatred so openly. He understood that his return was a blow to them, and now they would do everything to get rid of him. The next day, he decided to stay in the house. He owned it legally, so he had every right to be there. But as soon as he settled into his old bedroom, the problems began. That evening, someone cut the power to the house, leaving it in darkness. Adam stepped onto the porch with a flashlight and spotted a figure in the shadows. "You're still here?" Nate's voice rang out. "Looks like it," Adam replied. "Was the blackout you're doing?" "What the hell are you talking about? The power here is always faulty." Nate shrugged, but there was a mocking tone in his voice. Adam said nothing. He turned back inside and pulled a power bank from his suitcase to charge his phone. This was only the first strike. He knew there would be more. The next day, he drove into town to meet with his lawyer. But as he parked outside the office, the sheriff, a thin man with gray stubble whom Adam remembered from childhood, approached him. "Adam," the sheriff said, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "You've been gone a long time." "Yeah, life kept me away," Adam replied. The sheriff nodded. "I heard you're claiming the house." "It's not a claim, it's a legal fact," Adam shrugged. The sheriff studied him closely. "Be careful. People around here don't like change." Adam got the message. He nodded and headed inside. When he returned home, he found a shattered bottle near the porch. Beside it lay a note: "Leave while you still can." He clenched his jaw. This was a direct threat. Nate and Brenda were trying to scare him. They thought he would panic and run, just like before. But this time, he wasn't going anywhere. Adam woke up early. He knew that Nate and Brenda wouldn't leave him alone. They needed the house, and they wouldn't hesitate to use dirty tactics. But if they thought he would just walk away, they didn't know him at all. He made coffee and stepped onto the porch. The street was almost empty, with only a few neighbors sneaking glances at him. He noticed Mrs. Wilkinson, the elderly woman from across the street, quickly looking away when he met her gaze. She had always been kind to him as a child, but now her behavior had changed. Adam took a sip of coffee and thought. He needed to act. 1 hour later, Adam arrived in town. An hour later, Adam arrived in the town center to sort out the legal matters. He entered the municipal office and requested copies of the house documents. What surprised him was that a request for a change of ownership had recently been submitted, without his signature. "This is illegal," he told the office worker. The woman looked uneasy. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stanford, but your mother and brother claimed you were missing and unreachable." Adam clenched his fists. "Well, I'm here and I'm not missing. Cancel that request." The woman nodded, but Adam understood. This was just the beginning. He needed to talk to Collins. A confrontation with Andrew Collins. Andrew Collins owned a construction company and several stores in town. His office was on Main Street. When Adam walked in, the secretary gave him a wary glance. "Mr. Collins is busy." "He'll see me," Adam said, pushing open the door without waiting for permission. Collins was sitting behind a large desk, going through papers. He looked up and smirked. "Stanford, I was expecting you." "I hope you weren't counting on my house too much," Adam said, sitting across from him. Collins narrowed his eyes. "We can work something out." "I don't think so." Collins sighed and leaned back in his chair. "You're making this difficult, Adam. This is a small town. Everyone here knows it's better not to stand in my way." "I'm not afraid of you." Collins smiled. "We'll see." Adam stood up and walked out. One thing was clear. Real trouble was coming. A break-in at the house. When Adam returned home, he immediately sensed something was off. The door was slightly open. He stepped inside and heard rustling in the living room. Quietly, he took out his phone and started recording. "What are you doing here, Nate?" Adam asked when he saw his brother rummaging through his suitcase. Nate jumped. "Damn, I was just looking for something." "In my suitcase?" Nate clenched his jaw. "You're making a big mistake." "This is my house. I'm staying." Nate said nothing, but his eyes made it clear this wasn't over. Adam shut the door behind him and sighed. The war had just begun. The battle escalates. The next morning, Adam decided to take a tougher stance. His family and Collins clearly weren't playing fair, so he had to be ready for anything. He went to the local police station to file an official complaint about the attempted illegal takeover of his property. But as expected, his complaint was met with indifference. "This is a family matter," the sheriff sighed. "You should settle it in court." "I will," Adam replied. "But if anything happens to me, you'll be the first person questioned." The sheriff looked at him a second too long before simply nodding. A midnight warning. That night, the real nightmare began. At 1 a.m., Adam woke to a loud crash. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and moved quietly toward the kitchen. The window was shattered. On the floor lay a brick with a note attached. "This is your last night here." Adam gritted his teeth. It was a direct challenge. He stepped outside, scanning the darkness. In the distance near the street, he saw a shadowy figure quickly disappearing. "You're messing with the wrong guy," Adam muttered, heading back inside. From now on, he knew he had to be extra careful. The final straw. The next day, Adam decided to check his house documents, which he kept in a safe. But when he opened it, it was empty. Rage boiled inside him. Someone had broken in and stolen them. His first suspect was Nate. He had already been snooping through Adam's things. Now he had gone even further. Adam sat at the table, taking a few deep breaths. He wasn't going anywhere. He still had copies of the documents, but now he knew. The game had changed. His family had moved from threats to real action. Daytime confrontation. During the day, Brenda unexpectedly arrived at the house. She didn't look angry. Rather, she seemed calm, even friendly. "Can we talk?" she asked. Adam crossed his arms. "After everything that's happened?" "I just want to find a solution that works for everyone," she said softly. "The solution is simple. The house is mine, and I'm staying." Brenda lowered her gaze. "You do understand that's not possible." "Why not?" "Because the town doesn't want you here, Adam." He smiled. "The town, or you and Nate?" Brenda looked at him with cold eyes. "Think carefully, son. You still have a chance to leave without trouble." Adam took a step closer. "If you think you can intimidate me, you're making a big mistake." Brenda stared at him silently for a few more seconds, then turned and walked away. As Adam watched her leave, he realized that after this visit, things were only going to escalate. Fire in the night. That night, he woke up to the smell of smoke. Jumping out of bed, he saw flames flickering through the garage window. "Damn it!" he shouted, rushing to the door. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and began putting out the flames. The fire hadn't fully spread yet, but it had already destroyed some old furniture that had been stored in the garage. When the fire was finally out, Adam stood there, breathing heavily. This was no longer just a game. This was a real war. And he wasn't going to lose. Time to fight back. The next morning, Adam acted fast. He went to a lawyer and handed over all the evidence he had gathered over the past few days. Video footage of Nate breaking in, the threatening note, the firefighter's statement confirming the arson. "Your family has gone too far," the lawyer said, flipping through the documents. "I need formal charges filed. I want to make sure they don't get away with this." The lawyer nodded. Adam's next stop was the police station. This time, he didn't ask for help. He demanded action. The sheriff, who had previously dismissed his complaints, changed his tone when he saw the evidence. "We'll look into it," he said, his voice tight. Adam had no doubt that Collins had people in his pocket, but even they couldn't brush off such a serious string of crimes. It was time for payback. The tables turned. That same day, word spread through town. The police were investigating Andrew Collins. It turned out he wasn't just trying to steal Adam's house, he had been involved in shady real estate deals all over town. When investigators showed up at his office, Collins knew he was losing control. "This is your doing, Stanford?" he asked when he ran into Adam outside the police station. "I'm just protecting what's mine," Adam replied coldly. Collins clenched his jaw. "You'll regret this." "We'll see." A few days later, Collins disappeared from town. Rumors swirled that he had sold his businesses and left, fearing further investigations. Justice is served as for Nate and Brenda. Things turned out even worse for them. Nate was arrested for breaking and entering, as well as stealing the house documents. Brenda, desperate to save her son, took a plea deal and confessed to planning the real estate fraud. Their reputation in town was ruined. The people who once supported them turned their backs. Adam saw them one last time in court. "You destroyed our family," Brenda hissed. "No," Adam said calmly. "You did that yourselves." A new beginning. After everything, Adam could finally live in peace. He repaired the house, replaced the old furniture, and turned the garage into a workshop. He no longer felt like an outsider in this place. One morning, standing on the porch with a cup of coffee, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Calm. This house belonged to him, not just on paper, but by the right of someone who had fought through hell to keep it. And no one would ever force him to leave again. The end.